The streetlights weren't on yet, which meant you still had time. You'd been out since breakfast left the house after eating, told your mother you'd be back by dinner, and that was it. No cell phone check-ins, no GPS tracking, no scheduled activities or parent supervision, just you, the neighborhood, and your own judgment. You crossed busy streets. You solved problems with friends without adult intervention. You made decisions about what to do, where to go, who to trust. And if something went wrong, you figured it out. Because that's what black kids did in the 1970s. They handled things, not because their parents didn't care, but because their parents trusted them and believed that children became capable. By being given the chance to be capable, today, that kind of childhood is not only rare, it's sometimes illegal. Parents can face charges for letting children that age go places unsupervised. We've decided that independence is dangerous, that children need constant adult oversight, that freedom equals neglect. But black families in the 1970s knew something different. They knew that wrapping children in bubble wrap didn't prepare them for a world that wouldn't be gentle. Today, we're exploring why black children had so much independence, what they learned from it, and what we might have lost when we decided children needed to be protected from everything, including growing up. The independence started early, and it started with real responsibility. By age 6 or 7, you had a house key on a string around your neck or tucked in your shoe. This wasn't symbolic, it was functional. You were a latchkey kid, which meant you let yourself into an empty house after school, and you were responsible for yourself until your parents got home from work. There was no after-school program, no babysitter, no neighbor checking on you every hour. You came home, you locked the door behind you, and you followed the rules your parents had established. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't use the stove. Do your homework. Stay inside. Simple, clear expectations that you were trusted to follow without supervision, and you did follow them. Because breaking trust meant losing privileges, and you understood from early on that independence was earned and could be taken away. This wasn't about parents not caring. Black mothers and fathers cared deeply, but they also had to work, often multiple jobs, and they couldn't afford childcare or didn't have family nearby to help. So children had to be capable. They had to be trustworthy. They had to grow up a little faster than maybe they should have. But that early responsibility taught self-reliance in ways that constant supervision never could. Going to the store was another major independence milestone, and it happened young. 7, 8, 9 years old. You'd be sent to the corner store with a list written on paper and exact change counted out. Your mother would tell you what to get: milk, bread, eggs, a pack of bologna, and you'd walk those 3 or 4 blocks. Navigate the store, make sure you got the right items, and bring everything back along with the correct change. This taught math in a real-world context. It taught responsibility. If you lost that money or bought the wrong thing, there were consequences. It taught navigation and awareness. You had to know the route, watch for traffic, be aware of your surroundings. And it taught you that you could handle tasks that mattered, that your parents trusted you with something important. Today, sending an 8-year-old to the store alone would result in concerned calls to Child Protective Services, but in black neighborhoods in the 1970s, it was normal. The store owners knew the kids. The neighbors looked out. There was community supervision even without direct parental presence. And children learned to move through their world with confidence. Cooking was another area where black children gained independence early. By 9 or 10, many kids could prepare basic meals, not microwave dinners. Actual cooking. You knew how to make rice without burning it, how to fry chicken, how to heat up leftovers properly, how to scramble eggs or make grilled cheese sandwiches. If your parents were working late, you fed yourself and possibly younger siblings too. You learned by watching, first standing in the kitchen while your mother or grandmother cooked, absorbing techniques and timing through observation. Then you'd help with small tasks, stirring pots, setting timers, measuring ingredients. Eventually, you graduated to cooking simple meals on your own. This wasn't child labor, it was life skills being passed down, and it built confidence. Knowing you could feed yourself meant knowing you could survive, that you weren't helpless, that you had capabilities beyond what school taught you. Modern parents often keep children out of the kitchen until they're teenagers, worried about burns or cuts or mistakes. But black parents in the 1970s knew that protection from all risk meant preventing the development of competence. Getting yourself to school and activities was your responsibility once you were old enough. Nobody drove you unless the weather was terrible or the distance was truly unmanageable. You walked, you took the bus, you rode your bike, you learned routes and schedules, you knew which streets to avoid and which were safe. You watched the clock and managed your own time because if you were late, that was on you. There were no parent notes excusing tardiness because you missed your alarm. You set your own alarm. You got yourself up. You got yourself ready and out the door. This taught time management and personal accountability in ways that being chauffeured everywhere never could. You learned that your choices had consequences, that the world wouldn't wait for you, and that punctuality mattered, and you learned to navigate public spaces alone, which built street smarts and confidence. You could handle being in the world by yourself because you'd been doing it since elementary school. Managing your own schedule was similarly independent. There was no Google Calendar managed by mom with every activity color-coded and time-blocked. If you joined a sports team or club, you were responsible for knowing when practices were, getting yourself there, and keeping track of games or performances. Your parents might come to the big events, but they weren't at every practice, weren't coordinating carpool schedules with other parents, weren't managing your commitments for you. You kept track of your own obligations, and if you forgot something, you dealt with the consequences. Forgot your gym clothes, you sat out or borrowed something, missed practice, you explained it to the coach yourself. Your parents weren't calling the school or the team to make excuses on your behalf. This taught personal responsibility and organizational skills. You learned that your commitments were yours to manage, that adults weren't going to chase you around with reminders, and that being reliable was your job. Money management started early too. If you had an allowance and many black kids didn't, money was the type you managed it yourself. Your parents weren't tracking every penny or discussing budgeting strategies with you. They gave you a small amount, and what you did with it was up to you. Spent it all on candy the first day, then you had nothing for the rest of the week. Saved it up for something bigger, then you learned delayed gratification, lost it, to bad. Lesson learned. There were no bailouts, no advances on next week's allowance except in rare circumstances. You learned that money was finite, that choices had trade-offs, and that saving required discipline. Some kids worked to paper routes, helping neighbors with yards, babysitting younger kids in the neighborhood. That money was theirs to manage, and they learned its value by earning it themselves rather than having it handed over whenever they asked. Remember how it was back in the day. If you had a fight with a friend, you actually worked it out yourselves. Your parents weren't getting on the phone, calling their parents to set up some kind of mediation. They definitely weren't arranging a special play date just so you could reconcile. You either made up on your own, or you didn't. That was it. And if someone was bullying you, you were expected to handle it. You could stand up for yourself, figure out a way to avoid them, or team up with your friends for support. Running to an adult for every little conflict was seen as weak, unless things got genuinely dangerous. This whole process taught us so much negotiation, compromise, and real resilience. You learned that not every problem has an adult-sized solution. Sometimes, you just have to deal with difficult people or tough situations on your own. It taught you that standing up for yourself is a skill you absolutely have to develop. Now, don't get me wrong, modern anti-bullying programs are important, but they've also kind of created a generation that immediately looks for an adult to step in for any kind of social friction. They don't know how to navigate those bumps without a mediator. And what about failure? Failure was something you just experienced and handled without a lot of coddling. Failed a test? Well, you dealt with it. You either studied harder for the next one or you accepted the consequences. Lost a big game? You processed that disappointment and you moved on. Didn't make the team or get the part you wanted in the school play? That was just life and you learned from it. Your parents weren't storming into the school to dispute your grades or demand you get another chance. They weren't arguing with coaches about your playing time. They didn't try to soothe every single disappointment with treats and constant reassurances that you were perfect anyway. They might comfort you, for sure, but they also expected you to dust yourself off and get back out there. This taught us resilience and a growth mindset long before those became popular buzzwords. You learned that failure wasn't the end of the world, that you could survive disappointment. You learned that putting in the effort mattered more than just having talent, and that being persistent was way more valuable than being perfect. But here is a crucial part of the story. The community played a massive role in this independence. Black children weren't just left to fend for themselves, we were part of a collective. The entire neighborhood was watching out. Mrs. Johnson on the corner knew every single kid on the block, and she wasn't afraid to correct your behavior or help out if you needed it. Murdoch Williams down at the store kept an eye on all the kids who came in. The elderly folks sitting on their porches provided a kind of passive supervision. If you were doing something you weren't supposed to, You can bet that word would get back to your parents before you even made it home. This community accountability meant we had freedom, but it was freedom within clear boundaries. We were independent, but we weren't truly unsupervised in the bigger sense. The whole community was raising us, which made it safe to give children a level of autonomy that just wouldn't be possible in a neighborhood where everyone stays isolated behind their closed doors. This independence was also born out of necessity, really rooted in survival. Black parents were often working multiple jobs or incredibly long hours just to make ends meet. Single mothers were common in many neighborhoods, and they simply couldn't be home all the time. Extended family helped out when they could, but often, children had to be capable because there was simply no other choice. Now, this wasn't ideal. Nobody wants their 7-year-old to have to carry that much responsibility, but it created competence. Children rose to meet the expectations set for them because they had to. And Black parents also knew that their children would face a world that wouldn't give them extra chances or gentle treatment. They had to be tougher, smarter, and more capable than other kids just to get an equal opportunity. So, preparing them for that reality early on, giving them skills, confidence, and independence, was actually a profound act of love and protection, even if it might have looked like the opposite to outsiders. Fast forward to today, and parenting has swung in the complete opposite direction. And there are real costs to that shift. Modern children, especially in middle-class families, have very little unsupervised time. Their days are scheduled from morning to night with activities that adults organize and run. They're driven everywhere. They're constantly tracked through their phones. They're protected from failure, shielded from conflict, and rescued from the consequences of their actions. And what's the result? Many of them struggle with anxiety. They lack resilience. They can't handle disappointment. They don't know how to manage their own time or solve their own problems. The intention behind it is good. Of course, parents just want to keep their kids safe and give them every possible opportunity. But safety has turned into overprotection, and opportunity has turned into immense pressure. Children are monitored constantly, but they're also expected to excel constantly, which creates a ton of stress without building the real competence and confidence. That only comes from genuine independence. And the things that made the 1970s independence possible have also changed. Communities are far less connected now. Most people don't even know their neighbors. That sense of collective responsibility for all the children in the neighborhood has eroded. The streets feel less safe, whether that's statistically true or not. It's common for both parents to work, but now affordable after-school care has become a whole industry instead of just an older sibling watching the younger ones. Technology allows for constant connection, which makes parents feel like they should be checking in all the time. On top of that, the legal system has basically criminalized the kind of independence that used to be normal. Parents have literally been arrested for letting their children walk to a park alone, or wait in a car for a few minutes. Society has decided that children can't be trusted to handle anything without an adult supervising them, and that any parent who gives their child independence is being neglectful. But we've lost something incredibly valuable in this shift. Black children in the 1970s learned capabilities that served them for their entire lives. They knew they could handle things because they'd been handling things since they were kids. They weren't afraid of responsibility because they'd had practice. They could navigate complex social situations because they'd been doing it for years. They understood consequences because they had actually experienced them. They were resilient because they had survived difficulties without always being rescued. These are the kinds of skills that you can't teach in a classroom or through a lecture. They develop through real experience, through being given the chance to both succeed and fail through an independence. That's real, not staged. Today's kids get so much support that they never really develop confidence in their own abilities. They're praised constantly, but rarely tested in a genuine way. They're told they can do anything, but they're given very few opportunities to actually do things on their own. Now, the independence Black kids had in the 1970s wasn't perfect. It is true that some children took on too much responsibility too young and missed out on parts of childhood they deserved to experience. Some were put in genuinely unsafe situations, and for some, it was more neglect than trust. But for many, it was a preparation that served them incredibly well. It built adults who could handle adversity, who weren't paralyzed by challenges, who knew how to figure things out for themselves. And maybe that's something worth considering as we think about how we're raising children today. What if independence isn't dangerous, but necessary? What if protecting kids from all failure actually prevents them from developing resilience? What if trusting them is what builds capability in ways that constant supervision never can? The streetlights still come on every evening, But you see fewer and fewer children out there learning what it means when they do.